Everyone, welcome back to Biblio Fitness. Hope everyone's had a great day, made some fantastic gains, and had a fantastic weekend. I know I've been a few days in ghosting, but I just got back to the gym this Monday, so 2 days ago, and I just really needed the rest. I stopped working 7 days a week. It was a nice little experiment, but it's not worth it, for the little money that I'm making on the side. The physical toll after a while, just not like I was trying to brave it out, and I was, but then I look back on it, I'm like, but then I'm never fully resting. I'm never fully allowing my body to recuperate. And I know how hard we try to say, or we try to pose us as this immovable, unconquerable force, but we have limitations, and that's something we always have to keep in mind. So, but I did get proper rest. I went back to the gym. Like I said, I hit the same amount of weights, but like for my first upper session back, which was my upper A, nothing's been changed. I hit the same amount of weight, but I lost like 3 or 4 reps on average. But like always, that's just gonna start ramping up again in no time, really. So, but for today, I did want to discuss section 501, titled Mortal Souls. We're almost there, my friends. We're almost there. I'm like 45 pages out of this wonderful book. I'm going to read Beyond Good and Evil again at some point. I want to get some more reading from him, because that's really his magnum opus, or his... I've heard a person that I follow on YouTube make the claim that it is basically the sister of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. They both go hand in hand quite well with one another. And this is a transition to the gay science. And then from the gay science comes Thus Spoke Zarathustra. This is like a continuation or a project. But whatever, let's go ahead and discuss today, which I really do like. This is one of those aphorisms or sections that make you love Nietzsche, depending on your taste, of course. Quote, where knowledge is concerned, perhaps the most useful conquest that has ever been made is the abandonment of the belief in the immortality of the soul. Humanity is henceforth at liberty to wait. Men need no longer be in a hurry to swallow badly tested ideas, as they had to do in former times. For in those times the salvation of this poor, immortal soul depended upon the extent of the knowledge which could be acquired in the course of a short existence. Decisions had to be reached from one day to another, and knowledge was a matter of dreadful importance. Now we have acquired good courage for errors, experiments, and the provisional acceptance of ideas. All this is not so very important. And for this very reason, individuals and whole races may now face tasks so vast in extent that in former years they would have looked like madness and defiances of heaven and hell. Now we have the right to experiment upon ourselves. Yes, men have the right to do so. The greatest sacrifices have not yet been offered up to knowledge. Nay, in earlier periods it would have been sacrilege and a sacrifice of our eternal salvation, even to summarize such ideas as now precede our thoughts, our actions, end quotes. This is fucking awesome, and this is one of my favorite, or this really harkens to why I feel like Nietzsche is very attractive to many people, is this sort of notion that, without the proverbial crime, reward and punishment dichotomy that is centered in Christianity, we really do finally grow true courage, true honesty, true knowledge, because we don't have that proverbial judge hanging over our head. You know what I'm saying? Like, am I doing the right thing according to this God? Are the actions, the philosophy, the train of thought, or whatever, the influence that I'm beginning to gain or want to gain, is this for God? Is this for these virtues for me to fulfill or get closer to these set ideals, right? with that in mind, a lot of, with that in place, I mean, you're never able to really find more about yourself. You're never really able to truly experiment because you are afraid. You are afraid that if you perform actions that are considered deplorable by society, by morality, and what is morality but the voice of the many, the voice of the proletariat, the voice of the people. That's what morality is, the voice of civilization. And if you want to be even more cynical about it, it's the voice of the elite, what the elite wants, because at the end of the day, every single revolution and every single advancement or so-called reform is initiated from top down. And I know Christianity started with Jesus, but there is a reason why Christianity took off in the cities before, way before it took off in the countryside. So keep that in mind. But without that God, without him hanging over our heads anymore, and with that belief no longer in place, the fact that he says that we can't fully experiment as we never did in former times, how what is it, in times the salvation of the poor immortal soul dependent upon the extent of the knowledge. So even during like the medieval or Middle Ages, what was the entire advancement of thinking was, and even controversies within the Christian church, was analyzing just the Bible. The Bible was all you needed. You know what I'm saying? There was no true pursuit of knowledge. We're going at the same shit over and over again, and us being humans, misinterpreting and grabbing whatever, nitpicking whatever seems viable and positive in order to advance our own standing and our own wanting and our own drives for influence and power within this religion. Look at the Catholic Church and its hierarchy of the Pope and the bishops and the cardinals and the blah 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 blah. So that is essential, is facing nihilism and then affirming and overcoming it, because you can't fully now experiment and you could fully now accept error. You're never really worried that, okay, after I die, I have to face the consequences of my actions. That's a very big obstacle to overcome for a lot of people. You're worried about salvation. You're worried about damnation. You're worrying that the actions that you're bringing forth are going to cause eternal doom for you. So there's a finality in how we perceive the world. But and this the way he talks about this is very interesting, because I was watching a podcast about Freemasonry and the French Revolution, which is amazing. And one of the really important ideas is they're talking about the snake, the devouring snake, and its time eating itself, and how infinity is something that is against the Catholic teachings, right? The fact that once you get past the version of time, you look at past, present, and future as the same way, and it goes against free will and the singularity and the finality of your existence within Christian thought, right? That your decisions are one day gonna, you're gonna die, and that's gonna be it, and you're gonna have to wait until you get resurrected or damned by Jesus and stuff like that. But with no longer in play, you can really see far off into the distance now, because you're not afraid of what's going to happen to you. You know what's going to happen to you. Nothing. You're going into the void or whatever. Or who knows? Who knows? I'm making such grand assumptions, and who the fuck am I to make such claims? But I'll put my money that it's not the Christian one. Be that as it may, that's another restriction, a very important restriction on the mind that allows one to see with the eye of providence, which is very cool. I love that Freemason, whatever. But but you're able to see far off. You're able to accept errors because there is no consequences to your errors. This is all in the pursuit of knowledge, which can lead to very bad places, because with none of those restraints, you go beyond the pale of morality, and beyond the pale of morality is a very vicious place. And the fact that he says, yeah, we have the right to experiment on ourselves, and the greatest sacrifices have not been offered up to knowledge. Nay, in earlier periods, it would have been sacrilege. You know, what is the greatest sacrifice? And that's life. That's human life. And one thing that has always rattled me, and you know, I've always been thinking about, is why did ancient civilizations care so much about human sacrifice, animal sacrifice? You know, we're not willing to ask those questions because, based upon our modern moral sensitivity, we cannot dive that far into that proposition because of the simple fact that we are repulsed. We can't stomach it. But there is something to learn from that, because the greatest sacrifices yield the greatest rewards. And that's a huge flaw in our thinking nowadays, is that we want the greatest of gifts, but we're not willing to give up the greatest of sacrifices. We're not willing to put in the greatest of efforts. We stop at a certain point. We're not willing to go as far as sometimes we need to be. And that leads to very dark roads. But even in religion itself, people observe that, and that is the loss of human life. The fact that the greater your dream, the more of other dreams you are going to have to destroy and annihilate on the way to achieving your dream. There's not enough space in this world for everybody to live their petty little truths, and everybody to live their life to the fullest. It's not possible. People will have to get trampled on. And like I said, it just goes down a very dark, morbid road. And the 20th century calls to mind, right, that these men understood that. And people high up in the food chain understand that. You know, you look at the French Revolution and you have people writing in the newspapers, they want 20,000 heads, 30,000 heads, 50,000 heads. All these crazy revolutions require a pyramid of bodies. There will never be a peaceful transition of power, or a peaceful reformation, or a peaceful resolution to a huge conflict. And, you know, what are we going to sacrifice to continue this trend of knowledge, this trend of progress? Even though our version of progress, I believe today, is hindering progress in the long term, right? We're no longer struggling. We're no longer having to think for ourselves and think on our feet. Everything is just handed out to us. And since everything is so simple and tyrannical, we no longer need to grow, right? Everything is figured out for us. What's the point, right? But this very last part is very interesting, right? Because, like I said, you know, we no longer have the fear of eternal punishment hanging over our heads, and we can now face tasks that are so vast that before we were never able to conceive of, because of our myopia of vision, or myopia, or our restriction of what we deem to be possible based on our moral preconceptions, or moral preconceptions, you know, of what is deemed to be good, what is bad, and staying away from the bad. So, you know, it's a tough one. But like I said, even in Christianity, you have things like the Inquisition, you have things like what transpired in the Americas. People have to die for a lot of these things to come true. That's why I never understand people who really think communism and stuff like that could take off, because that's just not who we are. It's just very interesting that we never want to recognize our flaws when we pursue these sort of ideas, right? That's why I feel like we have to dupe ourselves in these constructions of these ideals by placing them in a pedestal of the metaphysical, or the divine, because then it's separate from our instincts, separate from our human condition, our very flawed human condition that causes us to ravage and kill one another when it comes to what is good. And what is good is power, and power is outside of ourselves, and that's why we go ahead and kill one another, because we want that good thing, and other people are trying to take it away from us. But when we come up with these ideas of so-called equality and so-called egalitarianism, democracy, a lot of people die in the process. People say there's a freedom of press, but yet they repress those ideas that they don't seem to be good or in the spirit of the Republican virtues and values that are now being brought forth. Weren't you saying you wanted freedom of the press? Aren't you acting the same way as the government previous to yours that deemed your way of thinking as volatile and contrary to the present government's wishes? Like, you literally are doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing. It's just different excuses, and now they're the ones in power. But we never want to get that self-analytical, because then the game is up. The hypocrisy is blatantly bright in your eyes, and there's no escaping it. But the ridiculous excuses we make to cause genocide and then villainize others who do the same thing, which is something that we're gonna have to face and something that we're still overcoming or attempting to overcome, right? Is how do we get past that? How do we get past those fundamental components of what makes us human, right? A lot of us think that is those actions and the way that we perform actions and all that stuff, or our natural behaviors, is something to be despised, and that is the entire essence of what the progress of the formation and the progress of civilization, right? Is for us to continue to forget where we came from. But be that as it may, with all the stuff with everything that we try and how hard we try, we can't get rid of those tendencies. And that's something else we have to take into account. But before I go, I'm not gonna continue on any further. I will save for later. I'm slumping out of just the legs, so I don't wanna, whatever. But thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. But yeah, the slump is starting to hit. Next was brutal. I got on the hack squat. So, and a good old Widowmaker set. So, love you all. Thank you all for watching. I do hope you all make some beautiful games today. Hope you all are safe. And until next time, peace. Right on time.